Good morning, good morning, good morning. Do you recognize the backdrop? I've got a little bit more stuff up there now, and I hope you like it. It's to add some visuals. We'll work out some lighting. There's a little bit too much light there. Here, let's see if we can fix that for you right now. See if that helps any. That's a little bit better. That's a little bit better. Very cool. Very cool. And we got our Canadian flag. We got another one. So CanCon, we're covered, right? C11, we're good. All right, Mr. Trudeau, we're good. Don't cancel me. Don't tell me what to say. I've got CanCon. Good morning, everybody. Did you have a wonderful weekend? Because I did. Still smoky around here, but I don't know if you can hear it. And let's see if we can see it. We've got rain. Alberta has been waiting for this day. This is really the first time we're getting some decent rain. So hopefully it doesn't mess up our stream too much. I know Ali has mentioned that might be some pixelation going on. Of course, folks, you're here for the audio. You don't really need to see this mug. But if the audio is getting bad, we physically have no connection to the outside world where we are. So we have to work with satellites out here. And sometimes the weather does impact that. So apologies if I'm a little bit pixelated, but hopefully the audio is good to go. Happy to announce, once again, confirmed, Tom's coming. Tom will be here. So he's going to connect in about 10 minutes or so, about quarter after. I spoke with him already this morning. We've been going back and forth all weekend. He has given me the green light to ask any questions. Nothing's off limits. Out of respect, I ask, any guest, are there any topics you would prefer me to stay away from? And Tom was very open and very quick on it. He says, ask away. So if you have any questions for Tom, make sure you put it into the chat, and I will absolutely make sure I get to it for you. Okay. So I'm excited about hearing what he's doing recently since the POEC. Last time I spoke to him, other than through Twitter recently, would have been at the POEC when I interviewed him and spoke to him off camera. Very good guy, very nice guy, working hard. He's not paid for this. He's doing what he can. He's also got a book coming out. He's released and announced a podcast. So we're going to get into all of that. And if you're wondering, how did Tom get there? How did Tom find himself in the middle of the convoy? What happened with Tom before, his career in the military, his family even. These are all things that we'll be chatting about today. So I'm very excited about it. It's going to be our first guest on this new format, other than you, Azario. You don't count because you're not you weren't a scheduled guest. But this will be our first scheduled guest, so we're very excited. Very excited. He's getting up nice and early, even for Eastern Time Zone. 8 is pretty early to be up and running for a podcast. So I'm very happy that he is going to join us. And I've got lots of questions for him, but I hope you do too. So please go ahead and put them in. Now, Weechi, I noticed that, if you're listening, I noticed that you added some chats to the stream before the stream started. I can't put them on screen because of that. Okay, so once I get into the studio, that's when the chats start to come into the studio, and then I can place them on there. But what Weechi wanted everybody to know is to pay attention to the National Citizens Inquiry today. He wanted you to know that there's going to be some stuff today. So I'm sorry I don't have the chat here, Weechi, but I did see it. I just can put it on screen. If you are hearing this, please put the chat in again, and then I will put it on screen. But in that case, inside my studio, Ellen's first. Good morning, Ellen. Really, really great that you're joining us first thing in the morning again. And very happy that you keep coming back. Your questions are great. We have some good dialogue. So I'm really glad that you keep coming back. Padge, I just saw you. You just ran away from the studio as the final minutes were closing in. But thanks again for the weekend. She's getting much, much better. And we're trying to, I'm running out of time, but I'm trying to do the debate, the Alberta election debate, with Padge, with Paula. So she's not quite well enough to be very talkative. So we'll give her another day or so. And if we can't pull that off, sorry, babe. We'll certainly do another video with you because your input is amazing. You have the female perspective. You have a different view of the world than I do. So it would absolutely be beneficial to share those. So thank you. And then, of course, Ellen, you're liking the new digs? Fancy schmancy. I even like this thing. Like, I went to Walmart and my budget was like $50. So for $50, I got this thing. I got the flag. Oh, I didn't get the flag at the Walmart though. They don't sell Canadian flags at Walmart. The young lady there that I ran into, I said, "Hey, where are your Canadian flags?" She says, "I bought mine at Canadian Tire." I'm like, okay. So yeah, I had to actually go to Canadian Tire to find a Canadian flag. This is Canada, Walmart. Why don't you carry our flags? But anywho, there we go. And then to kind of take you through this, Alan, this is a daddy doll. My wife made this. It's me. If you look really close, it's me with my glasses and stuff like that. The kids love it, and they provided it to me. Amazed they didn't arrest you for extremism. Hope not. I just had a sound out of my thing, so hopefully I'm not losing that. Padge, if you hear me, can you bring me the plug-in headphones? The kids may have a set. I may need the plug-in headphones. Oh, I found them, Padge. I found them. So I might have to prepare to cut over to this headset because I may have just got a warning out of my current headset. But yeah, so this is the stuff from the kids. This is a picture that a friend made for my son, JJ. There's a picture of Jacob himself. Cute little guy. Try and get that in there. Cute little guy. That's Jacob. He's hanging out with me every day. I also have the book, and it's not going to fall off anymore because I put a shelf in here. And then the stuff at the top. So I got a bunch of books, various books. Take a look at some of them. I got an award I won. It's really just a book end now, so the books don't fall down. We want to have a good morning. There's a hat from a flight club I was president of. There's an auction that I go to locally where we get most of our stuff. I want to remind you all that good things are coming. This is my wife. She's up here. She's behind my little thing right now. And then my pilot's headset. So a little bit of me up there. Yeah, I just lost my headset. So hold on. Let me plug this one in. Always ready with a backup, aren't we? So here we go. And I need this for the guests, or else I'm not going to, or they're going to come out of the speakers. All right, so there we go. We got a new headset, and that's how we roll in this show. We roll with the punches. Ellen's also saying, it would be fantastic to hear from Padge. Yeah, she's excited. Ellen, one of the things we were thinking about doing, Padge and I, is we have a lot of morning talks about our marriage, about our life, about our children, about the world. And I find them to be intriguing. And some of those we will start sharing with you. So yeah, so we're going to get her to be comfortable to come on the show. We're going to have camera set up over here for guests to be here, audio. There's more things to work out, but we're working very hard for you. And I'm amazed they didn't arrest you for extremism. I may be on a list, okay, for buying a Canadian flag. Yeah. It was odd how hard it was to find. It really was. This is kind of I couldn't even find a Alberta flag. And our guest has arrived. They're getting themselves ready. I can see the video. Oh my gosh, I'm very excited. So happy. So we may be adding him back a little bit early. Very excited. Billy Ray, thanks, buddy. Each time you show up, you're going to see something different as we're learning the lighting, we're learning the audio, we're learning the video, we're learning the backdrop, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very pleased that you've noticed and you like it. And of course, good morning, Billy. Good morning. Well, folks, he's here. I don't want to delay it. He's here. He's 5 minutes early, like a true Canadian, nice and prepared, ready to go. So why don't we just go ahead and bring him in?
Hey, good morning.
Good. How are you doing?
Hope you can hear me okay.
You sound great, and I like your backdrop. I'm taking notes.
Good.
You got really nice backdrop. So let me take some notes. And thank you, Ali, Tom Marazzo. How are you doing?
I'm good. There's a saying in the Army that if you're not 15 minutes early, you're technically late.
Yep. Yeah, and I
So
I live the same way. I'm here bright and early. You got to get rid of the problems first. So thank you so much, and I hope you don't mind. I jumped you on 5 minutes early. We've
that's
got
okay.
lots to talk about, so I wanted to get you in there.
Yeah.
And good morning.
Yeah.
Enjoy your coffee.
Cheers. Yeah.
So I want to first thank you. Okay, so when I first got into this stuff, went online, created a
Mhm.
Twitter account, really trying to connect to some of the important people involved in the convoy. You were the first
Mhm.
one to respond to me. I'm just a nobody, and here I am reaching out to you, and you're like, "Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, let's chat." And then from there, you've been super responsive, and I got to be honest with you, I even thought it wasn't you. Like I thought that somebody had your
Oh,
Twitter
really?
name, well, because there was a blue check mark at the time.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe
Yeah.
I stumbled across
Yeah.
somebody acting like
Mhm.
you because they're responding and being
Right.
very, very accommodating. So thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
responding to a little Canadian like me in the middle of nowhere, doing my thing. I do appreciate that. And it's allowed us, both you and I, to bring some of the
Mhm.
messaging to people who really care about Canada,
Yeah.
and they're staying on top of this issue. A lot of Canadians forgot about it,
Mhm.
but the people who are on this show that show up each day didn't. And we're not going to
Right.
forget about it. So thank you very much
Mhm.
for allowing me to enter your life that way.
Yeah, it's no problem for me. Like I didn't start the convoy, obviously. I got there 2 days after it already arrived in Ottawa. And so I've been put in this position by the efforts of other people to make a difference, right? So it's to me, it's important that it doesn't matter about the notoriety for me who wants to talk. Canadians want to talk, Americans want to talk. We should all talk. And it's not about ego. Oh, I'm not going to do that show or this show. It's like if you're Canadian or American or somebody who's concerned about what's happening in the free world, the alleged free world, we should all be given an equal audience and talk. And it's funny about the blue check mark thing. I'm just kind of trying that out. I was very reluctant to even consider doing that because I thought, I'm going to pay $10 a month so I can get an edit button.
Mhm.
Like that's it. Because I mean, my spelling is actually half decent. My writing is half decent, but it was like I would put something in Twitter. I'm like, okay, that's right. I check it. It's all thing. I hit the send the tweet button, and then it would change my spelling and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not what I wrote. Anyway, so people were like, well, you got to pay $10 for an edit button. I'm like, that's kind of ridiculous. But I looked at it because I was talking with Eva Chipiuk and Keith, and they said, there's a lot of benefits to getting it. Like you can longer tweets. Now they're allowing for you to upload 2 hours worth of video and stuff like that. And I'm trialing it out. I don't know if I'm gonna. It's not really a matter of being cheap or not. It's just, is it really worth it to me?
No, fair enough.
So far, yeah, so far I don't know. Who knows?
And then when we met, I had my blue check mark. I was in the old
Mhm.
system where you have to upload your ID, you have to
Right.
give some web links to prove that you're running for office, that kind of stuff. And then they gave me the
Yeah.
link,
Yeah.
the blue check mark, like right away. And then when I reached
Mhm.
out to you, I'm like, hey, you can get it too. But
Yeah.
now the world has changed. I don't have a blue check mark, and I actually am paying for
Oh, wow.
blue. Trying to get it back
Yeah.
because I don't want people
Yeah.
thinking it is a fake account. Um, that's
Right.
really, yeah, that's really
Right.
why I'm trying to get it back. So yeah, the world changed. I had it,
Mhm.
you didn't. Now we're
Yeah.
reversed. But thanks for
Yeah.
responding to me, even though I didn't have a blue check mark. And you've been very,
That's
very
okay.
helpful. Thank you, Tom.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to let
No
Ellen
problem.
say good morning because she thought, what a great first guest. Ellen, I agree with you. And I am really excited about today's episode. To let Ali know, we did start a little early, but we're going to get into Tom's
Mhm.
personal journey starting now. So
Okay.
before the convoy, we didn't know who you were. You
Mhm.
were walking around this
Yeah.
earth like the rest of us, doing your thing. So how about you go into a little bit of, you can go back as far as you would like, but at least a
Mhm.
military career of yours, and let us know a bit what you were doing before.
Well first thing I have to be clear is that I'm an agent of the CIA. I'm an
Mm,
agent of the FBI, CSIS,
yeah.
RCMP, OPS, OPP. I might work for Mossad, And I did steal all the convoy money so I could finance my Ontario Party election last summer.
Right.
Me and Bridget Belton stole the money together. I did split it with her so we could spend $4 million each trying to get $100,000 a year job. Okay. No, all joking aside, like, I bring that up because all of us, we all get called control opposition, that I'm a Fed, I'm a narc, the whole bit. It's like, just go onto my other YouTube channel. I mean, it's not by my name, but I
Mhm.
was a software teacher prior to COVID. So I retired from the army in 2015. And because I have injuries from my career, I had a really bad parachute landing
Okay, sorry.
and ended up ruining my hip and started to hurt my back and stuff like that. So I left the military in 2015. And in 2015, I qualified because I was injured. Even though I had a master's degree in business already, like, I still qualified for a vocational rehabilitation program. So I went back to school. I went to Seneca. I did a 4-year degree in software development. As soon as I graduated, like 2 weeks later, I was actually teaching at a college in Ontario. I was teaching software. And all along, I knew that I wanted to go into teaching. That's where I wanted to go. Anyway, 6 months I'm in a classroom, then bang, COVID hits. Now we got to transition to online learning right away. So obviously, I started my YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to know if I'm really a narc, I don't know why I have 72 software, programming tutorial videos on my other channel. You can just look that up and say, it's kind of weird that he's been doing software videos if he's actually a narc, right?
Right.
So that's what I was doing, and I loved teaching. I felt like, for the first time in my life, I really found the career that I loved. I was a part-time teacher, so what that means is that when you're trying to get into a college, you've got to pay your dues for a few years. But you're getting part-time pay with full-time hours,
Right.
and transitioning over to online learning because of COVID is easier for the software people to do that than maybe, let's say, nursing, where you need to be,
Physically.
online, or sorry, you need to be in a lab or something like that. So that's the way that kind of worked for me. But I worked hard as a teacher. I worked really hard, and the mandates came out through Western University. And then Seneca College in Toronto put out the mandates quickly after. And I got tipped off by one of the coordinators I was in the program I was teaching in. He said, look, if Seneca does it, usually the rest of the colleges follow suit behind Seneca. So Seneca's kind of the leaders in the colleges across Ontario. And so I ended up, I was saving anyway. I was saving every dime I could save in my account, knowing that this stuff was on the horizon. And there was no way I was going to take this experimental injection of any kind. There was just no way this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I planned for that eventuality. And in September of 21, so almost 2 years to the day that I was teaching, I got fired, because not that because I reject, or that I didn't take it, or I refused to take it, or attest to me taking it. I got fired because our president of our college at Georgian College in Barrie, Ontario, put out a couple of emails saying, we're instituting this vaccine mandate, and make no mistake, if you don't do it, like, very, very aggressive language, like, make no mistake, you don't do this, basically you're fired. And I thought, who in the hell do you think you are?
Right.
Talking to people like that on a distribution list across the campus. Um, and I'm sorry, but you're violating a whole, at least 10 different Canadian laws, as far as I could tell. So I took that email, and I emailed out to as many faculty as I could, including the president and the head of HR, the VP of HR. Which, by the way, I'm happy to report, I found out when I spoke at the Great Canadian Awakening 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
The guy who actually fired me and fired everybody else, the VP, he got fired.
Yeah.
And they did the whole perp walk right out the front door for that guy. I'm pretty stoked about that, right? Because he was a smug SOB who he was denying religious exemptions for people.
Oh,
He was literally, he would go in. I have a friend, very religious, was applying for a religious exemption and was quoting the Pope as justification for denying people's religious thing. It's like, well, if it's good enough for the Pope, it should be good enough for you. And I don't buy your religious interpretation over the Pope's.
that's
Like, this is the kind of smug attitude. Yeah,
that's the
the
exact.
VP of
Sorry, go ahead. The VP.
yeah of HR at this college, like, and the union really, I unions in this country need to be abolished, as far as I'm concerned. I would certainly say that the union that I belong to, if it wasn't for the collective agreement, I would have sued them. I would have sued the union before I would have sued the college, actually, or maybe both at the same time. Because I had a couple lawyers that were fired up and they wanted to, they really wanted to go, but I'm like, I've got to. We're getting into a lawfare situation now, right? It's like, can you afford to fight somebody in court and risk losing, and then having to be awarded the costs of a lawsuit if you fail? So you got your own cost plus the defendant's cost.
Plus the precedence you
So
set if you lose.
if you lose, exactly. So it was too early and too expensive, and I just walked away. And I mean, I did get an arbitration with the union, I think 7 or 8 months later, and I was told that that was quick. And yet I lost my arbitration. So what's happened is they agreed to do an arbitration, but they postponed it 3 times. So the day that I had the arbitration was 4 days after I found out, like, that, because I was running in the election in Ontario last year.
Yeah.
And they dropped the writ, they called the election, and then 4 days later I was in my first debate. So I had really about 3 days to prepare.
Right.
And the day I was preparing for the debate that I was in was the same day as the arbitration. And I went back to them, to the union lawyer and the union rep, and I said, you've got to get this postponed. Like, you guys have done a postponement 3 times. This is now the 3rd time. You need to get one for me because I'm running in the election.
Mhm.
And I've got a debate this afternoon, and that's what I'm preparing for. And they're like, no, you're not getting it. So I said, well, you get in there and you fight for me, because as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty first year law school kind of territory here. They went in, and because I wasn't there, I lost.
Really? So did they do
And I
like a
saw like
default
a,
on you, or
yeah.
did they just do a bad job?
I don't know if it was there was like a long, like, people can look it up on whatever it's called, Canly or Ken something or
Canley, yeah.
whatever, to find it. Because some scumbag out there decided to troll me, and he went and he found it,
Okay.
and posted it all over the internet, right? Um, and I anyway, that's a separate issue. And they were saying, you didn't get fired because you didn't take the jab. It's like, I never said I did that.
Right.
What I've been very consistently clear about is that I didn't even get to that point where I couldn't take the jab. What I got fired for, they fired me for cause, because they said that I violated their anti-spamming thing. So what happened was, I got the email, and then I went into the system and I started building an email list
Hmm.
of all the faculty and staff, including all the executive leadership I could find. And I sent an email to all of the people internal to the staff, right,
Okay.
of the faculty. And they said I violated anti-spam. In my letter, my email to everybody, I mentioned that there were several class action lawsuits being filed, and that, are you aware of these? Then they used that and said that I was trying to incite a class action lawsuit against the school, which is false.
But
I
you
never
still
did
have a
that.
right to, anyways, if you needed to. Like,
I do, exactly. And then the third thing is, what happened was, I accidentally, like, I sent a copy of the email external to somebody.
Okay.
What I didn't do, and I should have done, but I don't really think it's a big deal. What I did is I sent it, and I didn't take off all of the emails. Like, I didn't do a forward of the
Or a
email,
BCC or something.
excluding everyone else's, or a BCC. But the problem was this: all of those emails are public anyway. So if you're faculty, I could just Google your name at whatever college you're teaching and get your email. They're
Sure.
all public things. It's not like I revealed state secrets here. I mean, it's your public email that anybody could have grabbed. Anyway, they said that I violated the privacy or something like that,
Privacy and
and that's why I
proprietary
was fired.
information type of thing.
Yeah, but it's like these are all public things. They're literally listed on your school's website. They're not private things that I'm, revealing to people. Anyway, um, so I got fired for cause within 3-4 days. I was now unemployed. The funny thing is, my teacher ratings were all in the threes out of four.
Okay.
Right, for a brand new teacher, like 2 years experience, my ratings were very good, way above average. And my what's the website? Rate My Teacher, Rate My Professor.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
My ratings they're all pretty good, except until after the convoy. Then I had already been fired months later. Then a bunch of people went in there and said that I was the worst teacher they ever had. It's like, I'm not even a teacher anymore, buddy. Like, you're going on there and you're basically trolling me on Rate My Professor when I don't even teach anymore. So, yeah, Georgian College. It's funny because they're saying that I violated privacy and all that stuff, but yet they spoke to the media. Like, they confirmed that I was a teacher there, and they confirmed that I did get fired.
So your
Right,
privacy means
so
nothing.
means nothing. It
Okay.
means nothing. The military did the same thing. The military confirmed that I was a former officer in the military as well. When CTV, like after during the convoy, did my first thing and I got the attention of the media, they did go in and investigate that I was at Georgia, and they investigated I was in the military. And both those places did confirm that at one point I was an employee. And Georgian confirmed that I was fired. Right?
That is a
It's
privacy
like,
concern
you
right
know what?
there.
That's a huge privacy concern. And it's like, well, like you've literally now just impeded my ability to find future employment,
Mhm.
because now you've told the world that this guy was at the convoy and you fired him. But that's a small issue for me, because those who are like, I have been looking for work. For about 8 weeks now, I've been applying everywhere, and I'm getting like, all I received so far was rejection letters. And I thank those 4 companies that took the time to actually give me a rejection letter. But everybody else was just like, we're just going to ignore you.
May I ask
Right.
what you're looking
And
for?
I was looking for a software job.
Okay.
Just, but now at this point, I'm just going to focus on the podcast and finish the book, because I'm so far behind on the book. I'm going to finish the book and focus on the podcast. That's really what I'm going to do. Um, I don't get me wrong. I love the opportunity that I've been given in this country to have a voice, because there is things that I want to be able to say. But I've gained an incredible amount in my life since the convoy, but I've really lost a lot too.
Yeah.
I've lost, and I don't want to use the term sacrifice, because I don't like that word, but it's the only one I can really. It's been very costly to me, but at the same time, it's been very, very rewarding. I wish the world wasn't in this situation, where a person like me had to, be involved in the things that I'm involved in. But I don't have a time machine. I can't change anything, and I'm not going to. But I can say there are days where I just want to go get a job as a Walmart greeter and
Fade away
just
into the
get my life
background.
back in order. Fade away into the background.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard. Like, a lot of people oftentimes, they come to me, or like we'll go to an event or something, and I did an interview with Chris Guy last week, and it should be out tomorrow. Actually, we're going to put that one out earlier, and it's only because of the timing of the election in Toronto and stuff. And I asked Chris about this one question. I said, when you go to an event or something, you meet people, and this has been my experience, and Tamara and Chris Barber and some of the other people involved in the convoy. When you meet people, they present the very best version of themselves
Mhm.
to you. Like, they're excited to meet you. But for me, I'm actually excited to meet them. And they don't see it, right? Like, I'm really happy to meet people that are awake and they're supporting what the convoy movement started and is now and continuing on. I'm excited to meet these people. But they present the very best version of themselves, but then right away, I they transition to the worst possible things that have happened to them in the last 3 years.
Right.
So I get the best version, which quickly and almost immediately turns into hearing their story. And it's incredibly heavy. It's sad. It is very painful to go out and listen to all the time. And it's like people are looking for me for a solution. And, you know, yeah, there's things that I can say, things I can suggest, but people are so desperate for change to get things back to the old ways, the old world that we lived in. And we can talk about that in a minute, but it's really difficult when people are looking at you for an answer that you just don't have.
Yes.
Um, but doesn't mean I don't have the answer. I just haven't found it yet. But the answers are out there. The
Well,
answers are out there.
I hope you keep working with us to try and find that answer, because there's a lot of us that are also looking for some answers to what did
Mhm.
we go through, what did we see, and then how do we get ourselves out of this. I think a lot of us would love to go back to 2019 and appreciate it far more, because everything
Mhm.
changed after that one.
Yeah, and I don't think, honestly, I don't think we're ever gonna go back to the old world that we had. I think COVID has revealed far too many things. Like, it has literally pulled back the curtain on so many nasty things that we were all blind to. And so, at this point, I don't know that we need to fight for the old world that we used to have to try to get that back. I think we gotta start focusing on building the world that we all wanted or thought we were working towards. But now that we know about the corruption, we need to fight for a new existence, to
Hmm.
be perfectly blunt about it. The old ways are kind of how we got into the situation that we're in. And when we talk about politics, I mean, we are in this situation because we were disinterested in politics. As a
Yes.
society, we really didn't pay attention to what the politicians were doing. And now that we're hyper aware of politics, we're all coming to realize that the people, we have no power. And from my perspective, don't let anyone say that people have the power, because I've yet to see evidence that the public has the power over politicians, because we don't. And I'll explain that in case, it's I'm okay with people disagree with that, but I want to qualify what I mean by that. For 3 years, people have been protesting. And what have the politicians in power do? They close the curtain and they go about their business and they impose this crap on us regardless. You can run for office, which we did,
Hmm.
and yet if the media doesn't like you, you get no coverage unless it's a hit piece.
Correct.
That's the only time. Do you get invited to debates? No. So when I ran, the Uniparty had several debates. I was invited to two. I went to the first one, and I went to the last one, and I wasn't allowed in the last one because they imposed a mask mandate. It's like, mask mandates are over. They're like, too bad we're imposing one. It's private property. I said, well, I guess I'm not coming in.
Hmm.
They're like, oh, you could just wear it, walk in, sit down, and take it off. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the game. And they're like, oh, your supporters will understand. I said, you've got that completely wrong.
Correct.
My supporters will not understand, and they will not forgive me for that. I won't forgive me for that. So that is not something that's going to happen. And so if you're not a media darling, you get frozen out of the process. And this is where the media now decides they're going to select the front runners. They're going to put all their attention and their weight behind supporting the candidate that they want, and everybody else is going to get vilified, right? So the media is, in my opinion, directly involved in election tampering. I believe they tamper with elections, and it's very blatant. They don't even try to hide it. They favor a candidate. You look, for example, right now, Olivia Chow
Right.
is the front runner in the Toronto election. Olivia Chow
For mayor,
has
we're talking
done
about here.
nothing in her life. Yeah,
Okay.
for mayor of Toronto. She has done nothing in her career other than be a professional politician. She's never led a company. Chris Guy says this. She's lived off of the backs of constituents. She's the wife of former,
Jack Layton.
NDP leader Jack Layton.
Mhm.
But what has she done? What has she accomplished? Nothing. I mean, she was a sculptor. That was her profession, but she's not coming out of business. She's been involved in professional politics. She has no skill of her own. Drop her off in the middle of the woods and see what happens. She
She
has
won't
no
survive.
skills of her own. She won't survive. Like she's not a business owner. She's a professional politician with no skills other than being a professional politician. The reason she'll probably win the election. The reason she'll be selected by the media and the powers that be is because the system is built to protect itself. It's not built to serve the public. It is first and foremost built to survive.
Mhm.
The system is built to protect itself first and foremost. And so to bring in a new candidate into, Ontario Party as well as the New Blue had almost full rosters of candidates. And we had official standing with the Elections Ontario. After the election, we were getting funding from Elections Ontario because we qualified so much. And yet the leaders of each party were not invited to the leaders' debates. Why is that? Why is that? Derek and Jim were not invited to the leaders' debates.
Well, it's pretty clear
Why?
they have something to say that they don't want put on the air.
Exactly. So, then we fast forward. We've got protests going on prior to the convoy. Then we show up to the convoy, and did anyone talk to us? No. They invoked the Emergencies Act, right? So the biggest protest in Ottawa history, maybe Canadian history, and it was met with nothing but disdain as the convoy was driving to Ottawa. It wasn't even something that they were contemplating dealing with other than using police authorities. And then, they had all the authorities they ever needed, and then they invoked the Emergencies Act. So I'm looking all across the spectrum, and I'm saying, where do the people have the power? They thought they had the power to peacefully protest. Turns out they didn't. All you had to do is just invoke the Emergencies Act and put down a peaceful protest. And then what did we see last month? The PSAC union. The
Right.
PSAC
They didn't
union
have
were
it on.
far more aggressive than we were. They were immediately negotiating with the government, and they were blocking critical infrastructure on purpose and actually bragging about it. And they were threatening the government to do this. And yet, what did we do? There was no threats of violence of any kind. Nothing. We had no intention to do that. We were called racist, the whole, the laundry list of crap that we were called by the media and by the government. So I'm still, to this day, I'm thinking, okay, well, where's the power? Okay, now we've got social media.
Mhm.
Okay, or we've got media. Well, in comes Bill C-11,
C11. Yep.
right? Is the censorship bill, which now passed. Okay, well, what about protesting again? Can we protest some more? Well, not in Ontario with C-100, because if you use a vehicle to try to protest, so every time the public comes up with a creative way to push back against the government passes another law to restrict your ability to object to the actions of your government. So now we look at it and say, all right, well, what's another option? And what do we do with our money? Well, now look at it. They're trying to push the CBDC, right? And I go crazy inside my mind when I hear people saying, "Oh, this is going to be a great thing, convenient thing." It's like, wake the hell up. We've already had 280 Canadians have their bank accounts seized, mine included, without a warrant, without a charge, without a conviction. Okay, and some of those accounts still haven't come back.
Oh, wow.
Okay, Those were business accounts. They threatened to attack people's licenses to operate their trucking companies. The government of Canada shared all of our private confidential information with banks around the world.
Mhm.
They sent our information to China, to England, to France, to Wall Street, several countries, saying these people here are on a blacklist. Do not do banking with them now. Like, that's it.
And report any banking
So
they may
this,
have with you? They were asking for that too?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So they used FinTrack. FinTrack
Yep.
is designed to combat domestic or international terrorist financing.
And money
Okay,
laundering too.
and money laundering. But here's the thing: we never laundered any money. We did raise money. Canadians raised money for a cause that they believed in prior prior to the invocation of the Emergency Act. And what did Doug Ford do? He had his attorney general seize that money as a proceed of crime
Yeah.
when no crime had actually even been declared yet. Okay, so he seized Canadians' money and it still hasn't been released. Right. This is and this is honestly, I'm frustrated because this is how stupid Ontario voters are. And that's the first time I've ever called Ontario voters stupid. But the reason I call them stupid is because one, they didn't vote. Two, they didn't bother to see what other parties were out there. Three, it was the lowest voter turnout in Ontario history last year. And what did the voters in Ontario do? They rewarded their abuser with even more seats. So Doug Ford had an overwhelming majority government. He abused the public, like a domestic spousal abuse in some pretty awful ways, bragging about how he was the most tyrannical leader in all of North America, was the most strict, locking people down in taking away people's rights. And what did the Ontario voters do? They gave him 20 extra seats. Why? Because they were afraid that one of the 7 Liberal candidates were going to get reelected. 7 that's all the Liberals had was they had 7 MPs. They were afraid that the Liberals were going to win, so they didn't look at anyone else. They gave Doug
Just
Ford,
straight
the
blue.
guy who actually abused them, versus the fear they had of DeLuca, the Liberal Party leader. But they didn't bother to vote for New Blue or Ontario Party. Like, even in my riding, I got less than 2% of the vote.
Oh, wow.
Less. That's it. Like, less than 2% of the vote. Nobody, even Derek, I think, got 4 or 5% of the vote. It was really low. And what has Derek been doing? He's been fighting back. He started No More Lockdowns caucus. He's got 7 summons against him. The guy who's been fighting for this country since day one of the pandemic. And did constituents reward him? No, they gave the power back to their abuser. Right. And so this is why I think I'm fully qualified to say that the Ontario voters are stupid and they're lazy.
Do you think there's like a mass hysteria going? Because abuse victims will absolutely align with their abuser after time, after lots of abuse. Do you think maybe like there's a domestic type of abuse going on here with constituents and they can't get out of it?
I think that every individual thinks that they're a strategic swing vote.
Okay.
And they grab onto catchphrases. I hear this one all the time. A vote for the PPC is a vote for Liberals.
Right.
I hear that one all the time.
Yeah, me too.
These little catchphrases are really, really, it's not very insightful. It's not really a lot of depth to these little catchphrases, right? But they're meant to just quickly get people to make an uninformed decision. And I think the vast majority of people in Ontario just couldn't care less about the election. And I'll tell you the one catchphrase I can't stand is, "You're not going to vote your way out of this." It's such a defeatist attitude. It is such a defeatist attitude. It's like, well, you voted yourself into it. So why can't you vote yourself out of it? Why can't you just find a party that aligns with your values? You look at the record of what they've been doing. You look at what the leader has been doing on behalf of Canadians for the last 3 years, and you reward what the leader of that party or what the members of that party did. what people are doing in this country blows my mind. They're looking at the conservatives, the federal conservatives. They're looking at Pierre Poilievre as if though he's going to be the Messiah. Okay. And they're going to take everything that Maxime Bernier has done in the last 3 years and they're going to reward Poilievre for it. Right. Makes no sense to me. I mean, it's like, I understand some of the strategic thinking around voting PPC versus conservatives. But when I look at it, I just, from an ethical point of view, you're literally rewarding the perpetuation of the system that has victimized you while simultaneously expecting change.
That's an
Like,
oxymoron.
as far as I'm concerned, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the conservatives are the other side of the same liberal coin. And I guarantee if the conservatives were in power at the beginning of COVID, we would all be flocking to the Liberal Party expecting Justin Trudeau to be our savior.
Right.
That's
Because they would have
exactly the
done the same
way
thing, and we would have been asking for
they
pushback.
would have done the, yes. Yeah. And the reason I know that is because every conservative premier in this country did the same thing as the federal Liberal government did. So I don't see any difference. I mean, these guys are selected to be in the positions they're in to protect the system that they're part of. You know, Poilievre wants to go to the Ukraine. Like, he's supporting the war in Ukraine. I think it's ridiculous. We're funding the war in Ukraine. Poilievre's going to throw a whole bunch of resources into the war in Ukraine. It's like, you're gonna fund or try to back this proxy war in the Ukraine. Have you looked at the state of the Canadian military right now? The Canadian military could not defend this country. I mean, it's questionable whether or not they ever could because of the size, and which is why we're part of NATO and the UN.
Correct. Yeah.
But never before in my life have I seen the state of the Canadian military so bad. It has never been this bad. It's got an 18% attrition rate. And those are the ones who are voluntarily leaving either through retirement or just quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And or the ones that are being kicked out because they didn't want to comply with the experiment. These are combat veterans in this country.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Ellen brought up a question about this for you. How difficult was it to see so many in the military view the convoy negatively? How did that feel, being from the military and knowing what we were truly there for?
Yeah, I found it surprising and not surprising, to be honest. If you're looking at the career officers, the ones who really percolate to the top, there are very few exceptions that I can think of where those people were virtuous officers doing it for the right reasons and were believers in what they were doing and believed in protecting and defending Canada. And I'm not going to talk about the oath because that's not what I'm referring to. Because if you look at the oath of joining the military, when I joined, I gave the oath twice, and I took the oath twice, and I gave it to other people joining. You're actually pledging your allegiance to, at the time, the Queen, her heirs and successors, not the people of Canada or the Constitution. Now you'd be pledging your allegiance to the King, his heirs and his successors.
Especially Meghan Markle.
So you're pledging your allegiance, to Chaz and one of his sons, right? Yeah. So you're not. So my view about the military is that the truly good ones, the exceptional leaders, they're very few and far between. But the really good ones don't stay in for very long. They see how terrible it is in the military, so they eventually leave and they go on and have successful careers other places. And or as soon as they're eligible for pension, they punch out and they go start a new career and they collect their pension, right? The really crappy ones, the really crappy people, when the good ones leave, it allows the crappy ones to percolate to the top.
That's right.
And they take over leadership, right? And so I think the yes men that percolate to the top are not going to go against what the military's current thinking is in terms of COVID and freedom and restrictions and all that stuff. A lot of them just fell in line. And I think it's just pure ignorance of the fact that you're supposed to be there to defend the rights of people, to protect this country. And yet you fail to recognize that the biggest threat to this country is the Liberal Party of Canada. And the irony is this, is that the vast majority of military can't stand being governed by liberal parties, because the Liberal Party historically has always choked off funding to the
Mhm.
military. And if you look at the condition of the military when the Liberals have always historically been in charge, there's never been any funding for the military. But yet the Liberals always send their military everywhere.
Mhm.
Now, the conservative governments, what they do is they'll spend a lot of money and modernize their military, but they don't want to send them into these ridiculous conflicts. But with the Liberals now, we have never had a military in this bad shape than we've had now. We've never had that when they're facing down in their warmongering with Russia. And so when I looked at, the support of what we were getting from current active military, it's really hard to actually gauge, because we had a lot of veterans come to Ottawa during the convoy. And then we
Mhm.
started Veterans for Freedom. And we're up to about 3,000 members in Veterans for Freedom. I mean, that's a very, very small percentage. I mean, there's over 400,000 plus veterans of the Canadian military, and we're only representing about 3,000. So it's a very tiny percentage. But of the ones that were against the convoy, I think they're no different than the average public. They consume mainstream media,
Mhm.
and they buy into the propaganda. They just hook, line, and sinker take that propaganda. They're not informed, and they're certainly not willing. They're not flexible enough in their thinking to say, why would a group of people do what they did, and then why would a whole bunch of Canadians donate $20+ million of money in crypto? Why would that be? Maybe I should think about this and see what the real issue is. It's like, no, rigid. Automatically, they move to indictments of people supporting the convoy, and I don't get that, because in the Canadian military, we're actually supposed to foster people that are really good at critical thinking and
Mhm.
doing deductive reasoning, and yet it's not going on. But I could say the same thing about every post-secondary institution in this country right now. Those professors that brag about teaching students critical thinking themselves are incapable of doing critical thinking. So I can't be too harsh with the military when we have the supposed best and the brightest academics in this country who are falling for the same sort of mentality.
For sure. And I'm gonna push back small bit on one thing about the Liberal Party. You mentioned that they're the worst thing for
Mhm.
us. I think they're only second to the NDP, because the NDP
Yeah.
absolutely should be in a position to change this, and they
Mhm.
should be the ones that
Yes.
are out there crying foul, but they've been paid and bought.
Mhm.
So I think that
Yes.
puts them
I agree.
slightly above the Liberal Party as the most dangerous party in our country right now.
So let me take that a step further, because I do agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly, because in a party system, you have the leader of the party and you have a party whip.
Mhm.
Okay, so in the parliamentary system here, UK, all the Commonwealth countries that have the same garbage system we've got, you fall in line with the leadership of the party, and the whip comes around and gives you your orders. That is not representation of your constituents.
Mm.
That's following the party line for fear of retribution from your own party. That's not democracy. That is not somebody you elected to put into the seat going to, the head shed or the headquarters of your government and saying, "Yeah, this is what we want." Your member of parliament or your MPP or MLA, they're not representing you. You know what
Mm.
they are? They're administrative assistants in each of those constituencies for the leader of the party.
Yep.
That's all they are. They're just an admin assistant for Doug Ford,
A
in Ontario.
messenger.
You're not an MP. Yeah, you're a messenger. You're not an MP. You're a salesman. You're an admin assistant to Doug Ford in your riding. That's what you are. That's not representative government in any way, shape, or form. The people have been protesting since almost day one. And did Doug Ford listen? Did Jason Kenney listen?
No, we got rid of
Did
them.
any of these people listen? Right. They got rid of them. And, that we can talk about Alberta in a minute, because that's a very important election coming up this month. But You know, I just you look at this system, it is meant to protect the system from the people. It
Mhm,
is not meant to serve the people. And, you know, the NDP, there's 25 federal NDP federal members of parliament, 25. But the most powerful one in that whole party is Jagmeet Singh.
mhm.
He is the most powerful man in this country
100% agree with
because
that.
he is the only guy who has the ability to turn off all the tyranny coming from Justin Trudeau. But he
Correct.
sold his soul to Justin Trudeau somehow. And here's the thing that kills me. And I said this right after the convoy. I talked to a lot of people. I said, look, there's 25 of them. We need to do a full court press and actively um, target Jagmeet Singh and the 24 other members of parliament. We need to put as much pressure on those 25 people to break this alliance, this coalition government, this unelected coalition government with the Liberals. Then we can get some balance because nobody in this country voted for a majority government at the federal level. Nobody voted for that, but that's exactly what Jagmeet Singh gives him. But when you consider that the Liberals whipped the votes and the NDP whipped the votes, the only two people in this entire country that have the most amount of power is Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau. Everybody else has to fall in line. So two people in this country dictate over the future of 38 million Canadians. And you know, I love these strategic voting slogans and these people that think that their vote is the swing vote. And it's like, you're not going to take a chance on any form of change, but yet you fail to recognize the two people that have the most power right now. It's not Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre has no power, nothing, zip right now. He won't until he forms a government. But right now, he might as well not even show up to work. It doesn't matter what he says. All he can do is create sound bites. That's it. But they have literally no power as the official opposition. The only person who's got power is Jagmeet Singh. And
Mhm.
he's a traitor to his country for propping up what he's done with Justin Trudeau, who, as far as I'm concerned, should be put on trial. Um,
100%. And if you
but
watch this channel, that's
yeah,
100% where we're coming from as well. I do believe he's been bought and
yeah.
paid for. I believe they were classmates at the
Mhm,
Young Global Leaders program at the WEF.
mhm,
Their
yeah,
relationship goes back, and Pierre, unfortunately, was also a member. So
yeah.
there's where a lot of these roads are
So
coming together here.
yeah, I mean, listen. People always say they want to vilify Pierre Poilievre because, you know, prior to him becoming the leader, where was he on COVID? But I'm going to throw a little bit of defense his way,
Okay, cool.
and so here's the issue: the reason Pierre Poilievre is a household name, and because he's now the leader of the party, is because in the portfolio that he was assigned by the Conservative Party, he was the finance critic. That was his job. He was not the health critic. He was not the safety critic. He was the finance critic. And he was the most popular conservative MP that this country ever had. He had more social media followers than the entire Conservative Party combined, including Aaron O'Toole, which is why Aaron O'Toole fired him out of that job.
Okay.
But he became a household name because he was so highly effective at being the finance critic. Had he been the health critic or the safety critic, um, and gone after Trudeau on what he was doing with COVID, Aaron O'Toole would have fired him in a minute because Aaron O'Toole is a liberal. So the reality is that Pierre Poilievre, in the portfolio he had, he did a phenomenal job. But now he's the leader of the party. And what is he doing? He's sticking to his old playbook: finance, 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 which, by the way, I've talked to a lot of economists and they're like, that guy doesn't really fully understand what he's talking about. He's got some of it,
Mhm.
but on a lot of cases, he's kind of wrong on what he's talking about. And yet he's warmongering with Russia. He's talking about climate change, like as if though he's starting to get on board with that. And look how that worked out for Aaron O'Toole.
Right.
Um, he's not aggressive. He's not calling for investigations. He's not calling out any of the COVID stuff. He's been silent on Josh Alexander. He's not saying anything about this woke stuff. Now I get the wokeism crap is a provincial level stuff, but I think it should get the interest of the federal government as well. He has been silent on so many things, and the one thing I'll tell you I can't stand about what the Conservatives have done, especially Polyev, especially him, he has appropriated the convoy for his own political gain out of convenience. He did the same thing with James Top. I was there the day he showed up to walk a couple blocks with James Top on, the final day of the march. He showed up wearing a button down with dress shoes,
Right.
to go on a march. And he only walked a few blocks, took some photos, and then went off and did something else, right? Out of convenience, he has supported the convoy, but never in any form of a substantive way. I was emailing the guy during the convoy, towards the end, after the Emergency Act was invoked, after O'Toole was gone, to see if we could get something through him being the most popular guy. Nothing. To this day, I have received no response to any emails I was sending to him during the convoy or any of his staff. One guy actually was involved, but he had a headache and he was tired, so he went to bed early that night at 10 o'clock,
Okay.
is what I was told. Right. So, these guys, they walk the fine line. When they want the convoy for political gain, they pull it right out of the closet. They support it. But never in a substantive way have they supported us. They've used the convoy to support them.
Well, another example
So,
is
yeah.
the POEC. So they applied to have standing at
Yeah.
the POEC, but it was weak. It
Mhm.
was full of holes. Like if you read their application for standing, they didn't appeal, they didn't push back, they didn't put any meat into it.
Mhm.
They really just
Yeah.
for the ability to say, "Hey, we applied." They didn't let us, but there was
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
substance behind it at all.
No. And yet, if you watch that other committee that was going on in parallel
Mhm.
to the commission, led by Larry Brock and one of the other conservative MPs, I loved watching it.
Mhm.
Lloyd Dane or Dane Lloyd, I can't remember. He's really good. I will say this: the Conservatives, they've got some really amazing, really impressive members of Parliament.
Yeah,
They have
Larry's
some
great.
really good ones in
He's
there.
a bulldog. I love him.
Larry's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd hate to be cross-examined by him. He was a prosecutor, by
Yeah.
the way. He
Yeah.
is a lawyer.
Yeah.
But I like the way he does business. That is what I would expect from the official opposition. That guy is a bulldog. But they have a couple of shining stars, but collectively, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors within their caucus, but the end result is speaking for itself. Let me say one last thing about Pierre Poilievre.
Okay.
Poilievre, he has an undergrad degree in political science and something else. He has no advanced degrees, which is not a measure of education or IQ, or like, let's okay, it's a measure of education, yeah, but it's not a measure of like intelligence or whatever. And I do think Poilievre is a very smart guy, but no advanced degrees. He's not an expert in anything, but he's been a professional politician since he was a teenager.
Mhm.
He was involved in the Conservative Party as a teenager. And what has he done? He's never led a company. He's never led a large team or managed a, multi-billion or $1 million budget or, hundreds of staff. He's been a politician.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, he's got the same level of managerial experience as Trudeau had going into the thing. Nothing. And we're going to give him the keys to the country.
Yeah, well,
That's what we're
no, super scary. And I think
yeah.
if we can support Pierre, and maybe I'm out in left field on this one, but I do believe a few independent candidates, if we can get MPs in there that are independent, could support
Yeah.
Pierre on a much better agenda by giving him two things. One, some accountability. We'll keep him accountable. But second, to give him a way to go after and make the previous government accountable in a non-bipartisan way. If we have nothing but a strong conservative showing, which would be okay in a lot of ways, it would also close the door on effective accountability for the previous government, because it will just be bipartisan. However, if there's some strong candidates that are on the independent side, if we can get a few of them in there, maybe from the prairies, Alberta, these people, and I'm one of them that's running, would absolutely be a tool for Pierre as well, because we can be the ones to go after the political jugular of the other side, open the door, push hard
Mhm.
on inquiries without coming off as
Mhm.
bipartisan. And I strongly believe that I don't think Pierre by himself would be able to hold him accountable because of their mutually
Mhm.
assured destruction agreement as a duopoly. These two parties,
Mhm.
they stand back to back. They don't fight face to face.
Yep.
They stand back to back against all third party options. And this is why you get all that
Mhm.
propaganda about vote splitting and wasting your vote. It's because
Yeah,
those two parties have a mutually assured destruction agreement in place that doesn't allow them to
they do.
really go after each other.
Mhm. And, I asked Derek Sloan about this a month or so ago, because we were talking about the NCI and the commission,
Hmm.
the Public Order Commission. And he said, even the conservative official opposition party has no actual teeth, no authority. So that inquiry or that committee, those hearings that were happening with the conservatives,
Hmm.
it has no teeth. I mean, yes, you question the government in the members of the government, you question it, but it's really just for public consumption and to reveal, what's been going on. Conservative Party doesn't have any power to say, okay, we've done this big long investigation, had these hearings, we've cross-examined Freeland, who didn't answer a question for the thousandth time.
Hmm.
Um, there's no teeth to that at the end of that as well. And so, we have what the conservatives are doing, and I loved it. There was a lot of really good work being done by them, especially Brock. We had the Public Order Emergency Commission, which, as far as I'm concerned, was a huge robbery
It should have
for
been
the
produced by
public. And
Netflix.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
it was a
exactly.
liberal talking
And
puppet.
now it was. And when you look now at the result of the NCI, that's interesting. Sorry. The NCI was never about having teeth to attack the government, but a lot of that testimony can be used in future lawsuits.
Hmm.
Like, that's a lot of evidence that has been gained. That's going to produce a report. But more so, that was again another trial or court of public opinion. That was the purpose of that. But without angling towards trying to build a case, like a legal case, what it did was it allowed Canadians to tell their story. That's all it was. To tell the story of the harms that the government policies at every level across this country did to ordinary citizens who allegedly had rights.
Hmm.
And we had members of the media, members of the uh, medical community. We had
Even legal, dude.
embalmers. Yeah, we had everybody that were testifying against the harms. And that wasn't to produce, charges. That was to let the Canadian public understand what had gone on across this country. And it will there in the end, the goal is to produce a final report. They'll submit it to the government. They'll give it to all parties, I'm sure. Um, but I think that information is going to get out there and start to wake up a lot of people. And I'm seeing people wake up more and more because of the injections, the effects of the injections are starting to make people go, wait a minute, what happened to safe and effective?
Right.
Right? That's not really happening. And so because of that, combined with the NCI's report, I think the information that will come out of that is going to somehow be used in a positive way going forward. That's my hope. That's my
It's my
hope
hope
anyway.
too. And with the UK
Mhm.
doing some as well, and there's other countries, because
Mhm.
time is on our side. Time has always been on our side.
Yes.
As more time goes on,
Mhm.
more truth comes out. So with the UK doing theirs, us doing our NCI, Australia might be doing one.
Mm.
I think you're right that more and more of this information is going to come out. However, you do know that the narrative's fully controlled. So no matter how
Yes.
much of this truth we get out, do you really think it's going
Mhm.
to be
Sorry.
able to, no problem, it's going to be able to propagate to a level where we will have additional types of action demanded by Canadians? Or is this going to be something that we talk about historically as something we tried to do, but we got no action out of it? And the reason why I'm going to say that is because, do you really think the Conservative Party wants to put a system in place where inquiries have teeth? Because they're going to have to go
Mhm.
through them themselves as well in the future. So I'm not sure
Right.
that the Conservative Party are the ones that could put in something that has some teeth for us.
Yeah, I mean, no party is going to rise to the level of forming a government and then immediately put into place things that weakens their power. Right?
Exactly.
It's going to weaken their government, and it's going to give the liberals an opportunity, as an example, to hold them accountable. I mean, there's rumors out there that I've been hearing since probably last September that the liberals in the next election are actually strategically considering throwing the election, because what'll it do? It'll force the conservatives to clean up the mess that the liberals have created financially and medically, and they're going to get the blame. The conservatives are going to get the blame, and because Canadians have a historically very, very short memory, they're going to get the blame for everything the liberals have done. And then in the next election, people are going to be begging to bring the liberals back to save us. And that's
Interesting.
how they're going to play it. That's how they're going to play it. And then the liberals will govern for two more,
Terms.
2 terms.
Well, let's
Yeah.
keep an eye on
I
that one. We'll
think
see
that's
if
how they'll
that's
play it.
yeah, we'll see if that is Trudeau. This is a little segment that we
Mhm,
have when we have information that we're trying to about the government that we're trying to pull out.
mhm.
That's an interesting take, and I wonder if it's Trudeau that they would throw an election just for the sake of getting more terms. In either case, if we can get conservative in, maybe we can actually have some accountability and change those plans. But that's an interesting take for sure.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you're talking about with independence. So before the convoy, months before the convoy, I actually emailed Roman Baber and oh my God, Randy Hillier,
Randy, okay,
and
cool.
I asked them about independent candidates. I had a long email, and both of those guys did call me back. This is long before the convoy, and I had conversations about independence. And so I was advocating for it probably October before the convoy even happened,
Okay.
saying, that independent candidates, if you had enough independent candidates elected, could they form some sort of a voting block or something? Or, like, I was trying to understand what would happen politically if the majority of candidates were all independents. Would it default to a party um, that was a formed party versus independence? Because now the way our system of government is looking, it's like, well, you actually have to have a party that forms the government. But what if the vast majority of elected MPs or MPPs or MLAs were all independents? And then how would those people all pick a leader? Because
I've looked
by de
into that.
facto, they'd have to create an independent party,
Mhm. Yeah, I've
even though
looked
they're
in.
all independent, right?
Well,
So
they wouldn't need a
yeah,
party. They wouldn't need a party, but there would be an
right,
election amongst the elected MPs to pick a leader. They do have to pick a leader.
right,
And we've never
right,
done that. We've never gotten to that point. So that's
right.
why nobody really knows how that works. But as an
Mhm,
independent candidate, I've certainly looked into that because if we do have a movement
mhm.
coast to coast and Canadians wake up and they look at candidates and not to the party, then there would be no way that independents don't have a strong showing. Um, because,
Yeah,
MP now means a messenger of the party instead of member of parliament. So we really need
yeah,
to change that. But the
yeah,
procedure would
yeah.
be if it does form a minority government, they would have to elect amongst the MPs who the leader is, which would give a very interesting
Mhm.
dynamic because that means Canadians went to the poll without knowing who the leader was, and they were voting on the candidates that were for them.
Yeah, and I like that idea. That idea
Mm,
appeals to me.
it does too.
Because, in Canada, I mean, when you don't we don't, like, in the States, they vote for their president,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
straight to the
your
president.
president's name is
Yeah.
right to the president. You vote on who you want. In Canada, you don't do that. I mean, Justin Trudeau, we got stuck with Justin Trudeau because of 110,000 votes. That's it.
Hmm.
He got elected MP, and then those MPs elected him as the leader. So 38 million people got stuck with Justin Trudeau because of 100,000 or 110,000 people in the riding of Papineau in Quebec. That's how we get stuck with this guy. Um, and I don't think that that's a very good system whatsoever. I think that's a deplorable system.
Well,
Um,
imagine living in Alberta and how you would feel. because not only do we have to accept whatever the East is sending us, we are also the scapegoat for a lot of things, and we're also abused quite a bit by our federal government. And you mentioned that this particular
Yes.
election coming up this month is a very important one, not just for Alberta, but
Yeah.
for Canada. I had an
For
entire episode
Canada.
last
Yes.
week on Thursday about this. And then also my Friday
Mhm.
episode you might be interested in is about my independent candidacy. I
Okay.
talk about a lot of this there. Uh,
Nice.
but this particular election, I agree with you. This is a massive crossroad because we're either going to
Mhm.
vote Danielle in, which means we want to change and we want to push back and we want to work on sovereignty
Mhm.
and we want to actually make that a main issue and live with it. Or we're going to put Notley
Mhm.
back in, which means the sovereignty movement is going to end. And I believe the separatist movement is going to just accelerate because
Yes.
we're going to be too fed up that we'd have to do another Notley when we just had her not too long ago and she destroyed everything. So with the
Yeah.
media pushing hard with their propaganda, attacking Danielle
Mhm.
on minor, insignificant things, and not bringing forward any of her positive movements or actions or
Mhm.
anything she's doing,
Yeah.
we're having that struggle right now in real time here in Alberta. As an
Yes.
Ontarian, as somebody who's been in the political system a bit, has ran and has a very good insight on what we need in Canada, let's talk a bit on how important it is to you that the Alberta election goes one way.
Well, I think it's absolutely vital that the UCP wins, and we'll get into that why I think it's important. Um, because there are also some risks with the UCP getting in.
Mhm.
However, all of those risks are negated by the proposition that the NDP could get in.
Right.
That would be disastrous. I mean, I think that would almost be a nail in the coffin of freedom, because when you consider that, Notley works for Jagmeet Singh,
Mhm.
like that is her boss, like that party works and is beholden to the federal NDP, and I think that's a disgusting proposition for Alberta. But the issue for me is Danielle Smith is trying to affect the change and stick up for her province. And she's pushing back really, really hard against the federal government, which she should. Every premier should. So, you have a separation of powers between the federal and the provincial governments for a reason. But when you look at the NDP, when Notley answers to Jagmeet Singh, there's no separation there. That's the federal government having full control over the provincial government's decisions, and I think that that's not how the system is intended to work. The issue for me is a big issue for me, a really really big issue for me in Alberta is that Alberta has to expel the RCMP. They
Yes.
really need to get rid of the RCMP in the
Yes.
worst possible way and send a strong message, because the RCMP have been absolutely nothing but thugs and deplorable in the
When they
last
took
3 years
Tamara
over the
out, that
COVID.
was the end of the line for me. Yeah, when they took Tamara and picked her up and took her away, that was the end of the line for me. We needed
Oh,
Alberta police force. We need that now.
you need an Alberta police force in the worst possible way.
Mhm.
And going back to the floods, I think that happened in Alberta in 13 or 14, in the conduct of the RCMP in the areas, like they were going into people's homes and you know looking for guns in people's homes that had been forced to evacuate, and they confiscated people's weapons during a forced evacuation. They went in and they stole people's legal property, right? And nothing happened.
Mm.
To me, that's theft. That's break and enter. That is, like there's so many different ways to split that. But I met with Albertans that had the RCMP going into their homes during that flood and told me the stories. Like, not first, or hey, I heard about my friend. It's like, no, they went into my house. There was muddy prints all over, like standing in front of my dresser, and they had dumped all the contents of my dresser. They had thrown my bed over to the side. They ransacked my house looking for guns.
Mhm.
They found guns and then they took them, right? And these are all like legal firearms that were confiscated by the RCMP. I mean, Alberta did polls. They did they asked the public, do you want to get rid of, and this is under Jason Kenney, and he campaigned on it. And then he's like, oh, we're studying it. When he got elected, oh, we're going to study it further. And then the study came out and said, yeah, get rid of them. Oh, yeah, we'll do it. And then he never got around to it.
No.
The oil and gas industry is the economic engine of the West. The deals that we have in terms of our natural resources in this country they're absolutely terrible. The whole NAFTA or former NAFTA, whatever it is now, I never really agreed with that in terms of the oil and gas agreements that we've got here. And I don't think it's any better for Canadians since Trump renegotiated with Freeland. So I look at the West and I think that Danielle Smith is the only premier that's pushing back against a lot of agendas coming out of the federal government. And if she's not in power, now that's assuming she gets into power and she stays the course. The risk that Danielle Smith has is that she never fired all of the Jason Kenney people that allowed Jason Kenney to do the horrible things that Jason Kenney did.
Correct. And she promoted.
They're still she promoted a couple of them. Yeah, she fired her chief medical officer, but put in the second in command who actually helped the original chief medical officer.
We weren't pleased
do
with
this
that.
stuff. Yeah, so she's, you look at it this way: you're in a battle, right? You get a battlefield promotion as the commander of the brigade that you're fighting. You're in the middle of the battle. You can't exactly go in there and start firing all of your leadership in the middle of a battle. Okay, so she became the leader of the party. She wasn't allowed in the legislature because she wasn't actually an elected member yet. She had to wait till she won the by-election to be even allowed to set foot in, your legislature. So then she does that, but now she's going into a full-on campaign trying to keep the job as premier. Now, do you fire all the people with experience, all the people that have been elected? Like, how do you do that? You walk in and just fire everybody, knowing that you're going to go up against a psychopath like Rachel Notley. So she's kind of caught in this really, really difficult situation where in one hand, she's going to have to pander to her own party. Otherwise, her party's going to turn on her. And she's got to kind of walk that fine line. Now, I think what'll happen is she can get reelected, and hopefully the constituents are going to punish those MLAs.
Correct.
For their behavior and what they did during the time of Jason Kenney. And that's going to basically solve that problem for Danielle, other than she's going to lose seats in her party. Right. So if Tyler Shandro doesn't get reelected, that's a seat that goes to Notley.
Right. And that's a concern.
So you're caught. Yeah. So I think if it was me doing that, I probably would have walked in and said, all you Jason Kenney people, you're gone. I'm firing you. And I would have immediately started telling those constituencies, find a new candidate right away. And those are the ones I'm going to take into the election. And come hell or high water, those are the people that are going to represent the UCP. New people. She's a new leader, so I don't see any excuse for why she can't fill her ranks with new people as well. Right. So I think she did that. Now, I think she's really smart. I do think she's brilliant. She's very articulate. She knows the media. She understands. And I think she knows what she's doing. I think in a few cases, she got some bad advice on how she handled the Arthur Pawlowski stuff in the four guys that are still in custody, talking to the Attorney General of Alberta. I think the way she handled that, I think she got bad advice.
Right.
But if I look at Alberta and given all the factors we just talked about, if she loses, there's no hope in hell for Alberta to have the change that the rest of Canada is looking towards. Now, there's one more piece to this. If she wins Alberta, there's really interesting things going on politically in Saskatchewan right now.
With Moe.
Scott Moe he's got his neck on the chopping block, but she will hedge her bets to work with Scott Moe. But Nadine Wilson with Saskatchewan United or Sask United. They just formed the party. They've announced, they've done a whole bunch of stuff. They're already polling and pretty strong numbers, and they've only been around for a couple of months. So Sask United has some pretty excited stuff going on, and that election isn't for another year and a half to, year 9 months. So
Okay.
there's still time for that party to gain some momentum. There's only 1 million people in Saskatchewan. If you could create this block between the Alberta, Saskatchewan, and maybe Manitoba will take its head out of its arse. You've got sort of the West there that could sort of unify. Forget about BC. BC with that premier, that's a lost cause.
Yeah.
Alberta should just get out a big saw and cut that line right down the thing and say, float off into the ocean. Your government's done. That's the problem for the British Columbia citizens, to get rid of that bum, because he's absolutely insane. He is an absolute raving lunatic, with, I think, mental health issues for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So BC's gone. Alberta is where it starts. Alberta has to be where it starts. And think of the analogy. You've got a nice white napkin.
Mhm.
You drop a blob of ink on it. That ink is just going to spread out. I
Mhm.
think that's what's needs to happen in Alberta. It's never going to happen under Notley. Notley's going to get in line with 15-minute cities. She's going to destroy the oil and gas industry. She's going to go full woke in the schools. She tweeted recently about people deserving a good education, and they should learn about wokeism. Basically, it's like,
Mhm.
no, people deserve an education for reading, writing, math, science, geography, history. That's not an education. You're talking about the job of the parents. You use the word education, but what you meant was children
Parenting.
deserve to be indoctrinated.
Mm.
It's like, get out of the parents' way, get out of their way. Let them instill the values for their own children, and stop doing it because you've got a captive audience of children, right? That is disgusting. That's not how society is supposed to work, where the government is vilifying parents in schools
Mhm.
and indoctrinating them with this wokeism culture. This is crap. And that's what she wants to do to children in
100%.
Alberta.
And as a homesteader and a homeschooler for our children out here,
Mhm.
one of our major
Yes.
concerns is she's not a homeschool advocate, and she's actually a institutionalize your children advocate. So my
Yes.
concern is she's already threatened us with vax door to door. She said, we're going to go door to door to vax you.
Yeah, I saw that.
Good luck in the rural areas. The RCMP is too far away. But if she comes out
Yeah.
here and she's like, okay, you can't educate your children properly. We believe your children need this certain type of education. You've opted out of that education because we do report what curriculum
Mhm.
we're involved in. And because
Yeah.
your children are not getting what we believe to be the education, guess what? Knock, knock. We're going to take your kids because we've now deemed that to be
Yep.
neglectful of your children. And boom, we're going to now educate your children the
Yeah.
correct way. Ooh,
Yeah.
Quebec has
There
done
are
that. And
countries. There are. Yeah. 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 There are countries that it's illegal to homeschool.
yeah, Quebec is
There are
very
countries in Europe.
anti-homeschooling. Yep, for sure. And
Yeah.
with Quebec being one of the first that says children can make medical decisions, including surgery and experimental injections. They're allowed to
Yes.
make those decisions now without parental
Mhm.
involvement, let alone consent.
Yeah.
That's going to make its way through if you continue to have a Liberal or NDP government on your provincial levels. I know
Mhm.
Notley is going to target that. You can hear it in her
Oh,
propaganda
yeah.
that
Yeah.
she does not think
Yeah.
people are smart enough to raise their own children. So,
Well, yeah, just the hubris of this woman, right? Like, to believe that she knows better. Like, the way she talked, like when she was talking about going door to door, it's like, I'm coming to educate you because you're far too stupid
right.
to understand anything that I don't tell you. Like, the level of just ignorance to this person, to think that she knows better than parents on how
Mhm.
to you know do medical procedures. I mean, I say this all the time. It's like, when my children need to get their teeth cleaned or a cavity, I don't I don't take them to their teacher, right? When my children break a bone or need stitches, I don't take them to their teacher.
Correct.
Okay. I take them to medical professionals that deal with that. So when we're talking about wokeism, we're talking about experimental injections and all that stuff. The only reason they use the school to target the kids is because the kids are a captive audience away
Mhm,
from their parents,
mhm,
right? So my thing is like, my daughter was homeschooled because she's young. She was homeschooled until um, you know last September. It's the first time she's in grade 1. It's the first time she's been in school, right? But
okay,
JK and SK were homeschooled because of the lockdowns and just the circumstance we were in. Um, but if I was an Albertan and Rachel Notley was elected, one, I'd consider moving out of Alberta.
mhm,
Two, I would definitely pull my kids out of school. And
okay,
there are so many new learning pods and homeschool associations coming up. I met a woman, really interesting woman at the Great Canadian Awakening 2 weeks ago, who's advocating. Like there are several businesses starting to help people do
homeschool,
homeschooling.
mhm,
And honestly, I know children that are homeschooled, and you can't. They don't compare it to public school trained. Like the homeschooling kids are brilliant compared to, what do we call it now? Unlearning. Have to unlearn your children when they've gone to public school, and actually how poorly educated our publicly educated kids are. Um, so I'm a strong advocate for homeschooling. I think that's the right way to go. I'm not there yet. I'm not in that situation where I can do that with my kids because I don't have custody of my kids.
okay.
Um, but if I did, I would be homeschooling
Yeah, and there's a lot of parents around
both
here
of
who
them.
are talking exactly the
I
same way.
absolutely would be.
Yeah, and what they're doing
Yeah.
is, it's because of the indoctrination, for sure.
Yes. What's
So
great
I
about
do want
homeschooling.
to,
So go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, no, we have a small delay. I just wanna remind you, we wanna get to your book and your podcast at some point,
Yep.
but go
Yep.
ahead.
Sure. Um, you know, what was his name? Sir David Robinson. Might have his name wrong, but years ago he was advocating. He said, we educate kids based on their chronological age,
Mhm,
we their individual potential. And I find when you look at homeschoolers, they look at the individual learning plan for the kid based on potential, right? You can't do that in
exactly.
an industrialized education system. Um, but what you can do is indoctrinate them with cultural, social engineering. They'll all get that across the board because that's a social thing. That's not dealing with math or science. But if you look at educating children based on their individual potential, the outcomes have always been much better. I mean, look at Montessori schools. I mean, that's kind of the foundation, and all
Exactly.
these other things is like you train or you educate kids to their own individual potential, not to the industrial revolution level of education where we're pumping kids out like an assembly line based on the day of the year they were born, right?
It
That
makes no
shouldn't even
sense.
be a metric.
Correct.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So,
And it's funny you
um,
say that because the government is actually using the exact same argument for mature minors when it comes to things like maids and other things, right? They're using that
yes,
argument.
yes,
They're saying, "No, don't look at their intellectual age, look at their intellectual level so that they can go ahead and end their
yeah,
life." It's weird how it works in some places, but not everywhere.
absolutely, absolutely.
And I was gonna say you nailed it, Montessori. So Montessori is a wonderful program. If you don't know what it is, it's a child driven education system. And if we had homeschooling plus Montessori online, some sort of program, you're a software guy, I'm a software
Mhm.
guy. If there was something around that, there's definitely a potential for that market. We need it actually. We
I
just
think
need
so
that.
too. Yeah, and I think that that's a pressure on the market that
Mhm.
the market's going to respond to. And I think you're going to see this industry, the homeschooling or private education, just absolutely flourishing because parents who are sick and tired of all this indoctrination of children are going to pull their kids out and put them in another system. But the challenge for every parent is, with the cost of living right now, very few families can afford to have one parent stay home.
Correct.
It's too expensive right now just to survive. I mean, you got to put your kids somewhere for 8 or 7, 6 to 8 hours a day, so you can actually go and work. I mean, that's hard to do when you got young children at home. You got to go put
Mhm.
them somewhere so that you can actually go to work and then pay for whatever. I mean, some of these private schools are $2,000 a month, more than
Yeah.
one kid. This is an opportunity for wealthy people more so than low income families. So,
Well, to, encourage some people out there, we were not wealthy, but we had to make that
mhm.
decision. So my wife, she did
Yes.
give up her career, and, as a
Mhm.
consequence, we had to lower our lifestyle, lower expectations,
Yep.
do quite a few things, like sell everything off and kind of just
Mhm.
descale our lifestyle, as a sacrifice to our children.
Mhm. Yeah, and when you do descale, it's a hell of a lot heavier to have to carry every month too.
It's true, and, especially when we're not sure where every paycheck's coming from, because we are
Mhm.
uh, funding here.
Yeah.
Just like you're looking for work, it's tough out there, especially if you have a
Mhm.
certain
It is.
ideology. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
let's
get
go to your
an army pension. Yeah, I get an army pension, but the vast majority of my money goes to my children.
children. Yeah.
So, it doesn't go to Tom nearly as much as it goes to my kids. So,
And that's just who you are. That's the right way to do it. And I've been in
yeah.
contact with you and behind the scenes. I've been trying to get you out to
Mhm.
Alberta. I'm like, come on out here. We'll vote for you.
Uh,
We'll find you a place to live.
I
But
I
you
wanna
certainly haven't.
yeah, I can't, yeah, and we're gonna, my girlfriend and I are to come out to Alberta in the summertime,
Make sure
again.
you hit us up. We'll
Um,
show you a good time.
I love Alberta. I love being there. I've been there, I think, 3 times in less than a year, and I love it there. I absolutely love it there. Um, but my kids are here.
Yeah, of
My kids
course.
are in Ontario.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Um,
And if I couldn't have moved my kids,
yeah.
of course, I'd still be there as well. Yeah,
Mhm,
for sure. Now, your book, I know you've been working on it super
mhm.
hard for at least a year. You were
Yeah,
trying to get it out a
yeah.
little bit earlier this year, but let's go ahead and catch us up on where you're at with that and when we can maybe expect
Yeah, so sure. I had expectations of the book when I first started, some that were very realistic, but in terms of time, completely unrealistic.
it's hard.
But it is very difficult. But a couple of objectives that I had when I started the book was treat the book as if though I had a GoPro on my head, right? If in the book, but I'm not going to talk about stuff that I didn't personally experience. Uh, that's been shattered to a certain degree, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But I was also only going to talk about the experience from the convoy, from what I experienced personally. The second thing to that was I don't have any intention whatsoever of criticizing anybody on our team, right? Like there are some things that happened that were not good behind the scenes. I
Mhm.
will talk about them, but I'm not going to mention names. Okay, I'll
Okay.
leave it for the reader to kind of deduce who I might or might not be talking about. But my objective is not to say we were perfect, or that Tom was perfect the entire time. I mean, I made lots of mistakes. I had COVID, I believe, during the convoy anyway, so I was battling that. Headaches, sore throats, cough, the whole bit, but I was still able to function, and I was being treated. So I, you know, mistakes were made, um, and I don't have really an intention to smear anybody, but I want to. It's kind of an important. There are important details to the story, so I want to do it in a way that I'm still kind to people who may have unintentionally made mistakes. Now, I do think that there are some people out there that intentionally um, did malicious things, but it doesn't serve anyone to really talk about the actions of those people. I'm
Okay.
certainly not gonna. I'm not gonna write a book who sabotaged the Freedom Convoy. Like that's not my interest. That's not what I'm about, and I could care less about that nonsense. But then I went to the commission. I went to the Public Order Emergency Commission, and I only expected I'd be there for a couple days. Turns out I was there for the entire 7.5 weeks for the whole thing, and I was living with Keith Wilson, during that entire time. And day after day, I listened to that testimony. I'm like, I need to write my book, but compare and contrast, to use a public school term, um, what we were thinking and doing versus the testimony that we just heard from the police or from the government or CSIS or whatever. So I delayed the book because I felt that that testimony, that information that we learned was too important to the book. Um, to give it a little bit more balance in a sense, because I want to be able to say this is what we were thinking, this is what we were working towards, this is what we're doing. But then when you hear the testimony of the Ottawa police, you can see why everything that we were trying to do was not going to work because of what the police did and what they were planning to do all along. And I released chapter 10 of the book. I've got a mailing list and I released chapter 10
Can I put that on
for
my
download.
Discord for my viewers?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I
Okay,
released it. It's on my mailing list. I can send it to you as well, and you can put it out.
thank you.
But we were working uh, with Steve Kanalakis. He's the city manager,
Yes.
and I detail how I got that meeting, who was in the meeting, everything, and I talk about it. But the entire time, the day before I was offered that meeting by the Ottawa police, the uh, person in charge, a guy named Inspector Patterson, I believe is his name, Mark Patterson, he had already decided that we were not going to be able to move trucks. So we went through this whole entire charade of these meetings, me and the city manager with Keith and Eva, the other police, having all these long meetings with the convoy, the truckers on the corner of Rideau and uh, like in front of the Chateau Laurier, that corner,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
to try to get them to move up, right? The entire time we were going through that, the chain of command, the leadership of the Ottawa police had already decided we'd never be allowed to move trucks, even though they were using the city manager to negotiate with us to move trucks up onto Wellington. They already decided they weren't going to allow us to do it. So they had us chasing our tail for a day and a half, almost 2 days, for nothing, for no good outcome. They were acting in bad faith the entire time,
Well,
right?
it's nothing for you or no good outcome for you, but for them it was, because what they were using was to try and set the narrative that you're not cooperative, you can't do it,
Yeah,
you don't even have
yeah.
full support. We heard that in the
Mhm.
POEC.
Yeah, and then they did testify, because there was testimony where the public, they're called police liaison officers.
Mhm.
So the night, for example, when the Ottawa police went in, it was again Mark Patterson who ran this, and he didn't even show up to work that night, but he sent his public order unit to go in and do a raid on Coventry, and confiscate fuel and food and all these other things that they came in and stole. The OPP was so angry about that, they actually threatened to pull out and go home
Yeah, I
because of
remember
the
that.
actions of the Ottawa police. Right. And the police liaison officers were like, You guys, why would you do this? You set us back an entire week. Instead of having dialogue to work with the police and try to make it safe, and very professional, and good for both sides, which some of the police were working towards. So the liaison, like even the one of the deputy police chiefs, because I think they have three of them, Patricia Ferguson, she came from police liaison. That was what her job was before she had been promoted and named as one of the three deputy police chiefs. She was advocating for engagement with us.
Mhm.
One of the examples they used, they felt they had success getting people out of Confederation Park. They did that through engagement with their police liaison, and they thought maybe they could do that in other areas. Well, this Mark Patterson guy had completely sabotaged everybody on both sides, right? And for what? And then they turn around. They admitted to sabotaging me personally and undermining my credibility within the convoy.
Mhm.
They admitted to doing that on purpose. And then they were like, "Yeah, we knew, like this guy's credibility. We destroyed it with the convoy," which in a way weakened it, but it didn't really destroy anything, um, because I didn't have as much influence amongst the individual drivers as they assumed that I did.
Assumed and
Nobody,
required, it sounded like. They
yeah,
required you to have 100% buy-in or nothing.
yeah, exactly. And we didn't. Nobody did. Nobody had
You
that.
can't They can't get
Not even
100%
Chris or
anything.
Tamara. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Who can?
Um, and so, you know, the book, it does talk about, you know, my lead up, what happened, you know, before the convoy, you know, why I was motivated to do it. Talk about the people that I met, my interactions. Talks about a time that Randy Hillier and I actually planned on, for a very short period of time, we were going to park a bunch of tractors on the front lawn of the Supreme Court one day. I mean, we weren't there to be there the whole entire time and take that ground, but just to have a rally there, kind of prove a point. Um, you know, we talked about the meetings we were in, the decisions we were made, some of the chaos that was happening behind the scenes. Um, you know, my own experience trying to take what I did in the military and what I learned or was trained to do in the military, and apply it to what I was trying to do at the convoy. I talk about what my priorities when I went in there and kind of was, in a sense, handed a lot of responsibility immediately by the people who started the convoy. And, you know, what my priorities were. You know, some of the people that I brought to the convoy or called and said, "Hey, I need your help. Can you come in here?" And they did.
Mhm.
So I look at a lot of the stuff in that. I'm just finishing today. I'll be adding and doing a bit of editing on my chapter about James Topp,
Oh, cool.
who walked across Canada. Because James and I, we did a course together in 1996.
Oh, wow.
So that's how long I've known James. In talking about, you know, that sort of thing. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to talk about the Ontario election. I don't know that that really fits into the book. You know, it'd be one page. Tom ran, Tom lost, the end. Right.
Well, maybe
So
you'll get another book out of this. Maybe we can work on something after that.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? But I find you know, the book has been very difficult, much more difficult to write than I thought, because I'm very focused on not writing a book that makes Tom Marazzo look like the hero,
Well, it sounds like you're making a
because that's
truthful
not what
book,
the book is about.
so that wouldn't fit all the entire narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I won't sell this book in Amazon, or not Amazon, sorry, at Indigo. I refuse to do business with them
Okay.
because of what they did to Andrew Lawton. And, you know, you could go in there and buy, you know, inappropriate sexual, yes, exactly, things for that children can go up and grab off the shelf. But God forbid you go and talk about freedom
Right.
in the eyes of Indigo, a Canadian company. So I won't do business with them. There's no way I'm going to ever sell my product. I mean, they have flip flopped. They've changed their mind on selling Andrew's book, but I'm not going to do business. I'm going to sell my book on Amazon. But you know, if I was ever going to be selling it in a bookstore like Amazon, I would want my book to go on the shelves in the either management or leadership section.
Oh, cool.
That's where I'm trying to go, because I don't want to go in the history section. I would want it to go into the leadership section, because, you know, to be good at leadership, you have to fail and learn from the
Mhm.
failure. And I want to really be able to highlight the things that we did well and the things that, you know, maybe we could have really improved upon. But to try to not justify, but give the background as to why we made certain decisions that we've made,
And I think
and kind of go from there. That's the angle I want to take.
And I think Canadians want to hear that. They do want to hear the behind the scenes, warts and all. We're not expecting you
Mhm,
guys to have been perfect. We didn't expect you guys, because you
mhm.
are amateur when it comes to this. You weren't professional,
Yes.
anything. So we would
Mhm.
expect hiccups and problems. And I really believe Canadians would understand, even if there were
Yeah.
errors.
Well, I look at it, if you want to take a military sort of analogy to this, it's like the battle is going, and you're the brand new commander that literally got parachuted into the battle
Hmm.
and told you're now in charge of the battle. You don't know who your regimental COs are, commanding officers are. You don't know who your company commanders or squadron commanders or platoon commanders. You don't know who any of your leadership is.
Right.
You're meeting them in the middle of the battle. You have no idea what equipment that you have. You're figuring that out in the middle of the battle. and you're trying to gauge the level of training that the people under your command have. And now that I use, the truckers were not under my command. We were not at
Yeah.
war. We weren't fighting. We were peacefully protesting. But it's an analogy to try to understand or explain the how quickly this all came together without any preparation of any kind, and then bringing in new people. Like, I showed up 2 days after they were already there,
Mhm.
right? And you've already started. You're not doing workup training for a pre-deployment overseas. Like, it started,
Yeah.
it's on. You're now in it. And I wasn't expecting that almost immediately when I walked in the room that I would be given that level of influence within the convoy immediately. Um, so, like, when you say you hit the ground running, I mean, I was sprinting.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that came out during the first
but
press
yeah,
conference too. You seemed a little bit uncomfortable, but you definitely seemed like they wanted
yeah,
you there. It was
mhm,
clear to me that there was no pre-news conference, powwow where you guys kinda got everything in order, because it was more free flowing, it was more natural, and
yeah,
then a couple of hiccups,
yeah,
like, Tamara, I think,
mhm,
mentioned it was us, not me, but, I think the intention was very clear.
yeah. And I misspoke. I think on might have been the 7th or 8th, and I had said, let's come together, sit at a table, and form a coalition.
Mhm.
Right? I've got a table. If you go back and you look at it, and I had to do another correction to that. What I said was, you parties, all you parties, come sit at a table with us,
Right.
and you guys form a coalition government. But that's not the way the media interpreted it. The media said, "Oh, Tom just said the convoy is now going to inject itself into the government and form a coalition with the other parties, even though you're not elected, you're not a party." It's like, no, that's not what my intention was. And if you go and look at it clearly, you could, like, this is my mistake. You could interpret it that way. And that's what they did,
Mhm.
because that made us look the worst. But you could also look at it and go, no, what he's saying is, you morons come and sit at this table with Tom. We'll all talk. You guys figure out how to form a coalition amongst yourselves. And then you work with us to help us, repeal these mandates. That was what the intent was.
For sure.
And that's all anybody ever held on to after. Like, I saw an interview with Candice Bergen and Evan Solomon,
Yeah, been lovely guy,
where
right?
he was talking about, yeah, he's disgusting,
Mm.
where he was talking about me to Candice Bergen and saying, here's a guy who wasn't elected saying he wants to be in a coalition government. It's like, I texted him when I saw that, because I did meet him when I was with James Top, and we exchanged numbers. And I said, why are you lying about
Mhm.
this? Like, really, why are you lying about this? You know that that's false. Well, I'm talking about that date. I said, yeah, but you know about the one on the 10th of February where I corrected that. They
Correct.
don't care,
No,
right? They're vile, so
and they
they
must
don't care.
think Canadians are dumb, because there isn't even a mechanism for that to be possible. There isn't even a way for you to
Mhm.
go in there unelected and just push
Right.
someone out. It's not even a
Yes,
possibility, yet they're gonna run with that
exactly.
narrative. Um,
Yeah,
we're gonna wrap up soon here, and if you don't mind,
sure,
I'm gonna remind my
sure.
viewers that we do have Andrew Layton scheduled for not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday.
Nice,
So he's gonna be coming to talk about his book
nice.
and, give us an update since the
Mhm,
POEC as well. I do want to give you
mhm.
a moment though to talk about Meet Me in the Middle, because in addition to your book,
Mm,
you are also doing what I'm doing,
yeah,
putting a podcast, getting out
yeah,
there, trying to get some more of the messaging out and the truth out. Why don't you
yeah.
go ahead and let us know what your plans are around that and what you're doing with that?
So, Meet Me in the Middle kind of came out of a little sort of monologue thing I was doing on my YouTube channel, which is called Something to Consider.
Hmm. I like those, by the way.
And I would get these ideas. Yeah, I would get these ideas in the middle of the night, and I just, like, start writing. Um, and then I have friends that I work with, Mary and Paul. They both came out of the media world. They're retired now, but I do all my work with Mary and Paul. And I said, we've got this YouTube channel. We've been putting out these things. Maybe we should grow it, because we all have these ideas, these things that we want to discuss, these people we want to talk to. And Clyde Do Something. I'm a
Yes,
big fan of his
one of the
podcast,
best
and I've
podcasts
been
out of
interviewed a
BC.
few times. Yeah, and so I talked to Clyde and I said, "Clyde, what do you think about me doing that?" He's like, "Do it."
Mhm,
I said, "Are you worried about me competing with you?" He goes,
mhm,
"I don't care.
mhm.
I'm not competing with people. We all have a different take on it." And he actually encouraged me. He coached me through some stuff, gave me a lot of pointers, and I was like, "I've got this YouTube channel already. It qualifies to be monetized. I've got enough subscribers, enough view hours and stuff. So why don't we give this a go?"
Mhm.
And so after it was monetized, then we said, what could we do next with it? And I realized that I have this wonderful opportunity to get to meet a lot of these well-known Canadians who've been in this fight since day one. So far I've interviewed a lot of people that haven't been aired yet because we're trying to put one out a week, and we're doing all the post production on it. But I interviewed Chris Guy the other day, or Chris Sakocha is his real name. Dr. Ann Gillies, I interviewed her last week and we lost the recording. So tomorrow I have to redo that interview.
Okay,
But I interviewed Sean Buckley, Kristen Nagel. I was going to interview Daniel Fright, who is Viva's brother,
cool.
who's a lawyer in
Oh, yeah,
Toronto,
he went to Windsor for a
right?
bit of it, didn't
Yeah,
he? Yeah,
yeah. And so I've reached out to Lieutenant Steve Rogers from the States to see if he'll come on the show. I've Bruce Party's agreed to come on the show. Trish Wood has agreed to come on. So I've got access to these people that have a lot more important things to say about what's going on for the viewers than me.
okay.
And I've got an opportunity that I can talk to them. So I want to take advantage of the opportunity that I have so that Canadians can hear from these people in different ways.
Please do.
And yeah, and so I'm lucky from that point of view. I interviewed Drew McGilvery. He's the main founder of Veterans for Freedom,
Okay.
and I talked about his career in the Navy and his career where he was a couple of times prevented from saving women and children from being human trafficked, but was ordered by the Canadian military to stand down.
Oh, wow.
Right, and I have access to these amazing people, and so I want to talk to them, and I want to get their stories out.
Thank you.
Um, so that's really what the motivation is behind that, and I'll keep doing it for as long as it's interesting. But at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but I have financial realities,
Yes,
right? I do have
yeah.
financial realities, and if I can't monetize it, or if it can't get to some point where it's sustaining, I can't afford to keep doing it. Like I've lost my entire life savings to everything since the convoy. I've lost it all. Like it's gone. I have been looking for work. I have been unsuccessful with it because I think I'm 50 years old now. I've graduated software school in 2019. So I'm basically a 50-year-old rookie who hasn't worked in over 18 months. And then if you say, "Oh, I'm kind of interested in this guy. He was a teacher. He did this for a while." And then if you Google me, you're going to be like, that might be a controversial hire,
Correct. Yeah.
right? So I've really handicapped my ability to get meaningful employment. But this is more fun. This is more interesting. And I think I've got the opportunity to, get information out there for people. So I think that's what I'm going to pursue for as long as I financially can do this.
That's
Um,
wonderful, Tom.
and with the book, yeah, I want to get the book out. I'm hoping this summer I can get it published. I'm hopeful.
Well, I have a book coming out. It's self-published on Amazon. It's about becoming a new witness in the modern
Nice.
era because I believe what we're missing are
Awesome.
real witnesses. There you go with the book. Thanks, Ali. And
Awesome.
yeah, and what I'd like to say is with Clive Do Something in BC, you got me in Alberta. I'm interviewing a gentleman named
Mhm.
Zach Schmidt on Wednesday. You should check that out. He's from
Okay.
Saskatchewan doing a podcast. So that entire episode is going to be
Awesome.
about people like us and you getting our
Mhm.
voices out and how we can go ahead and do that. Because I believe
Right.
we're missing those voices in the Canadian conversation. So I do have
I
to
think
wrap
so.
up because part of my production
Okay.
is I
Awesome.
do want to make sure that we get this out on time. I do want to ask you though, maybe
Mhm.
offline, I'll ask you again about maybe coming back. Maybe we can talk more about the
Yeah.
POEC. Uh,
I'd love to.
Eva,
Yeah.
Brendan, Tamara, we'll see what we can do. But
Mhm.
thank you so much, Tom.
Yep.
I know people really appreciated hearing from you today, and we're going to do this
Th-
again. And if you need anything from me, the
Awesome.
book, podcast, legal, I'm a tech guy too,
Mhm.
software. Let's talk. Okay, bud?
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You want to have any
And thanks
last words to
everybody for
everybody?
tuning in. No, well, if you're in Alberta, get out there and vote. Make a
Yes.
decision and vote. You're not going to get any change unless you actually participate in making the change you want.
That's 100% true. We
That's
got
all.
1 week to go. I know Keith is all over that as well. He's working hard at the election.
Mhm,
He's agreed to talk to us after the
mhm.
election, so we'll have to wait a week for
Yes.
him. But thank you so much, Tom.
Mhm.
And if you want, you can stick around.
Thank
I'm
you.
just going to do my goodbye to everybody. Well, everybody,
Okay.
that was Tom. So that's our first guest on the second week of the show. As you know, he was very, very involved with the convoy, and he's one of Canada's hidden gems. So I'm really, really pleased that he took the time to be with us today. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. And as always, God bless.